guys, welcome to a Gamers Command segment. We don't really have a name for it. It's the first of its kind for us, at least. My name is Sam Prime. I'm joined here with Tori Kelly. How you doing, Tori?
I'm doing great. Good to be here.
So we are doing a little video on my favorite Magic cards that I think should be Final Fantasy cards. The first segment will be cards that are already sort of Final Fantasy cards. The next are ones that are wildly too powerful to be Final Fantasy cards, but we're going to see how we could make them into Final Fantasy cards. This is all a surprise to Tori. I haven't given him the list beforehand, so he has no idea what to expect.
Yeah, I've never really played competitive Magic, so this is going to be a lot of new cards to me, and I'm excited to see what Sam has brought here today.
So the first one is, like I said, a card that's already in Final Fantasy, and that is Birthing Pod. So Birthing Pod is pay 1 and 2 life, or pay 2. Sacrifice a creature, search your library for a creature card with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrifice creature power, then put it onto the battlefield. So this is Birthing Pod Cloud, or Cloud Pod as we know it.
Pod, yeah.
The difference with Cloud Pod and this is that this goes for this would be any category to any number. Birthing Pod is one of my favorite cards of all time. I would just like to see it in other categories other than Cat 7. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, one of the scary things about Birthing Pod is that it's not a creature, it's an artifact. So, like, one of the main weaknesses of Cloud Pod is that you just kill the cloud, and he has to live a whole turn to do his effect. With Birthing Pod, as an artifact, I believe it can use its effect the turn it comes down. Am I wrong about that?
Nope, you're correct. It would be just like a monster.
Just like a monster. And as a monster, it would be a lot harder to interact with. So I personally would love this effect in Final Fantasy. I would love to just be able to, like, sack off a realm and turn her into, like, I don't know, a Fina or a Neo Exdeath or any 6-cost forward. That seems really insane. But luckily in Final Fantasy, at least with monsters, it's a lot harder to activate a monster than it is to activate a forward. So it'd be a lot harder to, like, do this multiple times in one turn.
So let me ask you this. I mean, you said Fina, so that'd be one way to actually do it multiple times. But so what if they made this card? So in Magic, you can pay Phyrexian mana, which is basically you pay the color or you pay 2 life. So what if they kept that rule, but instead of you can pay 2, you could use this ability by paying 1 and taking a damage. Would that balance it?
I don't think that would do that much because it's a lot easier to pay 2 mana in Final Fantasy than it is in something like Magic, right? Because if the card you're summoning draws you any cards, that's just instantly 2 mana that you can pitch.
No. But I'm saying that instead of paying 2,
you have to pay
life.
You have to pay life.
You pay 1 and a life every time you Birthing Pod.
That's still really scary. Just allowing allowing people to just modify your life. Like in Final Fantasy, taking damage is even more powerful than it is in Magic, I believe. Outside of, like, I know like Death Shadow is a card that wants you to be low on life, but, like, being able to, like, manipulate your damage value is, like, half the reason why cards like Bosch are so good. Okay. So I think that this might be a little scary. I think if anything, being able to take damage makes it stronger.
Okay, so do you think that if it's like, let's say we kept the cost the same, it's 4 cost, do you think that would be playable as not a forward? It's literally a monster that has this ability. Can't become a forward. It's just take a damage, break a forward. I guess that makes it more interactive, which is better, right?
Yeah, I think if you got rid of all the Phyrexian symbols and put them with regular mana costs in Final Fantasy, Birthing Pod would probably be too good at 4 mana and then the 2 mana.
Okay.
Just because it would allow you to do things like dodge Ammon and things as well.
All right, yeah, no, that's fair. All right, so the next card, again, is a card that we already sort of have, and that card is Renoa. But Restoration Angel, when it enters the battlefield, you may exile a non-angel creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under control. The difference with this is that it has flash. It has back attack. And I don't know what you have to pay for that card to be playable in Final Fantasy, but maybe it's like 6, because Renoa with back attack would be way too good.
So the difference between flash and back attack is that because Final Fantasy allows you to discard at any time to generate CP or mana, is that these types of effects are so much more powerful in Final Fantasy. Because, like, it's a lot harder. Like, you can't tap out under unless you, like, discard all your entire hand. So the fact that your opponent would have to be playing around this, like, at all times, compared to Magic, where once they tap under force 4 mana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's
once they have 4 white
that's
mana in Magic, for example, when this was constructed playable, this was like a beast and constructed, and it just protected your things. Not to mention, obviously, like you'd bring like a Thragtusk, which would gain you like life and produce a
life,
token and
yeah.
stuff. But I think it like if they made this card cost 6, for example, it
I could see
would
this being
be
fair at 6.
Yeah, it would be played as a 1 or 2 of and still be really good.
Yeah, what element would it need to be in? Would it still be ice?
Um, it
Because I don't know if I
feels
want
like
other
that's
elements having access to that.
yeah, it can't be water, that's for sure. And they don't need to give Earth anything more. It would be like lightning or ice, yeah.
Yeah, I could see this in lightning. Yeah, I think this would be fair at 6. Just being able to, if your opponent tries to remove a threat, being able to protect it while also doubling down on leave the field and enter the battlefield abilities. I think 6 would be a fair amount. That's a lot of cards.
Yeah. So our next card is also staying on the Flash theme, and that's Snapcaster Mage. So Snapcaster Mage just says when it comes in, you can target an instant or sorcery from the graveyard, and then it gains flashback. So you can basically cast it again, and if you do, you remove it from the game. We have stuff similar to this, like Terra adds it to your hand. There are the Krill, which Krill is basically this. Actually, Krill is this card where if you cast it, it removes it from the game, but Krill does allow you to use your opponents. The difference being is that this card has Flash. I think that them making a version of Krill that had Flash would be really good and not too powerful yet. What do you think?
I think this could exist. I think, yeah. So the main thing with summons is that when you're playing around summons, you like know how many cards in hand your opponent would need to like cast the summon, right? Like if my opponent only has 1 card left in hand and only 2 backups up, like I know I'm safe from Amat most of the time. So with Snapcaster Mage, that requires them to have 2 additional cards in their hand, assuming they're fully tapped out. So I think you could allow this to happen. That's no different than them just having the summon. This just adds extra consistency to finding your summons. And like if you compare this to Kral, she has an additional effect that allows you to gain value turn after turn after turn. Well, this is just the ETB. So I think taking away the recurring value of Cryo and instead giving her Flash wouldn't necessarily be too scary. I mean, maybe you might have to up it up to like 3 mana just to be safe, because I could see this being a little scary with like Arc and Chaos Arc.
Yeah, for sure.
Actually, yeah, a little too scary with Chaos Arc. So probably would need to be 3, or they could just ban Arc.
So the cost, if they kept it the same, the flashback cost is equal to its mana cost. So it's not the same cost. It's equal to the mana cost. So it looks at the printed cost. So if you had Arc, then it would be 11. But yeah, or it would be 9.
I imagine, however, they templated this in Final Fantasy would include the discounts.
Because that's like, what they've done.
Everything else does. Like that's how Man in Black works. That's how everything else works. I assume that it would keep the discounts.
All right. So the next card is really interesting.
I like this name.
Goblin Guide? Of course you do. All right. So Goblin Guide is a haste for creature, sorry. And whenever it attacks, if any player reveals the top card of the library, if it's a land, that player puts it in their hand, right? So this is interesting. What I was thinking though is something that I don't know if it would be like a blue fire card or something that costs 2, has haste, but when it attacks, you reveal the top card of your deck, or both players, whatever, and if it's a backup, you add that card to your hand. I feel like that would be a really cool effect.
Well, my first thought is, well, if it's 2C, would that be like a 2CP forward in your mind?
So
that sounds like Furion, but worse.
So it sounds like, okay, so yeah, but you don't need 5 characters.
That's trivial.
What I would want is, I would want it to be like I guess so. The thing is that you can't have it be 2 mana because it's too easy. You just discard a card, you play I think control decks would actually play this, right? A 2 mana guy that sometimes just draws the card.
Well, this also sounds a bit like the Sarah Mobius, that whenever you gain a crystal, reveals the top card of your deck, and if it's a backup, adds it to your hand. And gaining crystals is, in certain decks at least, ones where you could put Sarah Mobius in, is actually really easy, and you can do that multiple times. So, as it stands, I think card draw in Final Fantasy is just rated much lower, I think, in general
So
than it is in Magic.
if this was a fire card, though, like it is here, right? If this was a
Yeah,
fire card that when this attacked, right? So you have a hasty deck. When this attacked, for example, if it was like, what if you changed it so this is a land, right? What if said you reveal the top card? If it's a forward with haste, play it or draw it onto the field or something.
I do think that there is a lot of room in Fire for draw effects, because
That's
I
what
was
I'm
in my
thinking.
mind I was thinking like a water card, because like one of the big issues when I was trying to build mono Fire this last set was that Fire just has the worst draw in the game. Maybe just because I'm a water player at heart, but like I'm like trying to build these Fire decks, I'm trying to draw cards, you just cannot.
Yeah.
So just giving Fire some kind of even conditional draw will go a really long way. Yeah, I would like this in Fire. Yeah, just because Fire doesn't really have any backup engines. So being able to like look at the top card of your deck and try and draw some lands to help ramp for like to get to Leonis would be really nice.
All right, so I'm gonna jump around. So we were doing some of the more casual stuff. I'm gonna jump into something that I think would be quite crazy, and that is Doomsday. I want to get into this card. All right, so Doomsday is it's a 3-mana sorcery. Search your library and graveyard for 5 cards, and exile the rest. Put the chosen cards on top of your library in any order. You lose half your life rounded up. So the equivalent is we would literally go get 5 cards from our deck and graveyard or break zone, remove everything else from the game, and then we continue the game from there. Is that too good? Is that way too bad? Like you have, let's say you did 6 cards or something like that. You would have 3 draw steps, possibly, but you could go get combo engines. You could go get Eldnarsh, for example. There's all kinds of weird things you could do. What do you think?
I have to think on this.
Yeah, this is what I said. This is a crazy one. So you search the library for 5 cards, exile the rest. Let's say this card was spoiled today. This is spoiled. The spoiler just came out from IGN, and you see this card. Are you like, I think that's playable, or are you like, I think this broke the game?
There has to be some way for this to break the game. There has to be. There has to. I don't know what it is. I feel like in any fair deck, this is doing absolutely nothing.
Correct.
Because
yeah.
Final Fantasy, like, because of how the damage system works and you need to hit your opponent 7 times, like comboing your opponent to death and killing them in 2 turns is like not easy, just due to the nature of how the mechanics work.
So this card says like you lose half your life rounded up, and we already have Eldnarsh, which loses the game after that turn. Yeah. What if Doomsday said, search for 6 cards, exile the rest, you lose the game at the end of your next turn?
The thing is, this doesn't add any cards to your hand, though, right?
All this
does is stack
you
your
need
deck.
you need like a Guido or an X-Ray in play. Like you need some sort of thing, but it does give you and you also pick the order of those 6 cards.
I could see this actually seeing play, if only just to help out at the end of the game, right? Because let's say there's less than 5 cards left in your deck. This is adding gas to your deck, for one.
Yeah. So that's true. Or if there's 8 cards in your deck and you need a very certain pile of those cards to win the game.
Yeah, or if there's you need like your last copy of Warrior of Light, and it's all of them are in the break zone. You can add them back into the deck, and then you can draw it next turn. I think there has to be a way that this is good. I like black is like kind of like lightning.
Okay.
In Final Fantasy, so I was thinking like in lightning how this would be.
So this would be broken, but fun.
Yes, this would be really fun. I don't know how you break it yet, but there has to be a way.
All right, well let's keep going.
Oh, naughty card with Yawgmoth in the name. I know it's gonna be broken.
Yeah. If I spelled it correctly, let's see.
Would it be Yawgmoth?
Yawgmoth's Bargain.
Okay.
Yeah, Yawgmoth's Bargain. All right. Skip your draw step. Pay 1 life. Draw a card. So I think something like this would be skip your draw step. Pay 1 life. Draw 2 cards in Final Fantasy.
It would need to be draw 2 because to make up for the fact that we draw 2
again.
cards
This is probably a monster. It's probably like a blue, like a water earth monster or a water fire monster. Maybe water lightning.
Yeah, lightning has some self damage too. I don't actually think that this would be broken in Final Fantasy, and for one major reason. Well, for 2. One, we have a lot less life.
Yeah.
So, like, if we're spending 6 mana for this, right?
Mm-hmm.
8, that's 4 cards from hand, including itself, right? So
Yep.
we're going to need to draw at least 6 cards for this
So
to
we
be
need
worth
to pay
it.
4 life, or we need to pay 3 life to draw 6.
3 life minimum, which is half our life. And we have no way to heal in this game, unlike Magic, where you can, like, draw cards that heal you.
But if you first play Doomsday,
Oh, wait a second.
and then
Never mind.
Yawgmoth Bargain, you just hit a bunch of EX bursts.
Sorry, I forgot. We have Mira and we have Witch of the Fen. We can just sacrifice this whenever we want after we draw the cards. There actually is no downside.
Which is a thing that you do in Magic too. You Yawgmoth Bargain and you can sack it whenever you're done with it.
Actually,
there's ways to get rid of it.
This is so broken. No.
Okay.
Get this off my screen. This is broken. The fact that we can I was thinking we couldn't get rid of it, but I forgot that we can just sacrifice this after we draw 4.
If we're gonna be on broken, let's talk about let's just keep things broken. All right, we're gonna go to Mishra's Workshop. Let's see. So right here. All right. So Mishra's Workshop is tap to add 3 mana to your mana pool. Spend this only to cast artifact spells. So I think you know where I'm going with this. Where this is a backup that taps to pay 3 for any monster you play.
Oh, but it's colorless. Would it still be? So would it generate light mana?
I think so. I think that like discarding an Earth card to play a Luminous Puma is actually insane.
Yeah,
right?
So if you like dulled this, discarded 1 card, play Luminous Puma, that would be like equivalent to making Luminous Puma cost 3 mana to add back 2 cards. Yeah. That's actually not that amazing. So the thing is, most monsters in this game that are like good cost like 2 or
lower.
less.
Yeah, blue worm and stuff like that.
For those, because this generates colorless mana, only generates 1 CP anyway, so that doesn't do anything. So the monster needs to cost at least 4 mana before this can actually help you like start discounting them.
But right? So I will say that a lot of the cards we're talking about today, we would convert into monsters. So I am picturing some of these cards coming out at the same time, right? So like this and a set with the monsters that we're including that we're creating
today. Birthing Pod.
So exactly. So this being in a set that is monster focused. So you're gonna have some more expensive monsters. You're gonna have a Wrath of God monster at like 7 or 8. Like you're gonna have these monsters that come in and they're big bads.
Yeah. So we would need some expensive monsters for this to be worth it. But
okay.
I mean, if this is a reason to start running some expensive monsters, right now there's no reason to even run the expensive monsters a lot of the time because they're just not worth it because they die for 0 mana.
Let's go to a 3-cost monster. Crucible World. You may play land cards from your graveyard. What if there was a monster that said you can play backups from your break zone?
Okay.
Not you can use them for CP, of course, but you could play them.
Motion detector at the front door.
Oops, sorry about my motion detector there.
Let me think. So if we played this turn 1, for instance, by pitching like 2 backups, we could then. So this costs 3 cards to play, right? So we would need to play at least 3 backups for this to be worth it.
I feel like it could be good. You could play like Ignis, for example, that like breaks stuff, and then you could like replay the free backups, the Carpenters, and
so like this would be really good in Fire.
Really good in Fire or Earth,
especially with the new what's his name, Vincent coming out next set. I could see this being really good. This seems really good in mono decks that break their own backups because then you can just replay the.
So it would need some sort of caveat to it, right? Like you can only use this ability once per turn, or something, because like some of the abilities, some of the abilities allow you to break backups, and if you're breaking Carpenters and replaying Carpenters for free,
I think this would need to be like an action ability. Target a backup in your break zone. This turn, you could play it. It's similar to how like Minwu FFBE works. But yeah, I think that could exist. I don't think that's too broken. Like, because it takes a lot of turns for it to recoup its value.
All right.
Right? Like.
So let's talk about backups and break zone. I really like this card in Magic. I don't know how it would fare in Final Fantasy, but it's Life from the Loam. It is return up to 3 target, or say backups from your break zone to your hand, and then you can dredge 3. So at the start of your turn, instead of drawing a card, you can put the top 3 into your break zone. So this would work with the FF8 engine package, with the Fujin and Rajin, for example. But these dredge cards, but this one returns backups. Is this unplayable? Is it because it, it is paying 2?
This isn't nearly as good in Final Fantasy.
I don't know. This
Magic.
seems like Black Lotus to me. And
Final
Fantasy.
No, this is okay. If it only costs 2, it's broken.
Yeah,
right?
because you pay 2 and you bring back.
Yeah,
3,
we just get 2 free mana. I was assuming we
backups.
costed it at 3 or 4. I think that this would need to cost 3 to see any. At 2, it's broken because you can't print 2 CP, draw 3 cards in Final Fantasy. You can't do it.
Right.
You just can't. So it would need to cost 3, and that way it's only generating 1 mana of value, 1 deep going CP positive by 1. And that way you're I'm willing to go CP positive to get cards that basically do nothing, because I'm assuming that we have max backups at this point.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, again, it would be interesting with some of the other cards. It'd be interesting with Crucible, for example, because you're putting more cards in your break zone, dredging it. Instead of paying 2, you could also make the cost, as part of as an additional cost, you must put the top 6 cards of your deck in your break zone, for example.
Okay,
right?
Yeah. So if you did something like that, so you were okay, I can get extra going CP positive right now, but it costs me to deck out. I can see that.
Yeah, it also could be a good thing. Obviously, if you have Fujin Rajin, you have stuff like that in your break zone, giving you more access to stuff for your other cards. But yeah, definitely interesting. All right, let's see which one I want to go with next. I have so many cool ones. Here's a really basic one that we don't have, that I believe, and that is Clone. This would be from World of Final Fantasy, I guess, but basically when it enters, it comes as a copy of a creature on the battlefield, which means it also gets its enter trigger. What do you think about it? Is 4 too much? Is it too little? I mean, if my opponent has a Leviathan in play, can I pay 4 and make a copy of that card?
Ooh, let me think. So we get the entry triggers?
You get the entry triggers.
There are some really good cards to steal their entry triggers.
For sure, but 4 is kind of expensive, right?
4 is kind of expensive.
Like a 4 CP 5K, for example. This would be a 4 CP 5K that comes in and copies any 4, but your opponent plays a realm, and you're just
yeah,
well,
exactly.
I'm gonna pay 4.
I would love to have a 4-mana realm. Yeah,
and you also get to copy your own guys, which is really interesting. Yeah. This would probably be a mannequin. That makes sense, right? It would be on flavor. Yeah. But a mannequin
it could be what's his name? The Cat 6 Go-Go?
Yeah. That's a good example. Yeah. So it just comes in and it is just a copy of that card. It'd be really interesting.
I would love to have another Titus on board at a time.
Or your opponent casts a Titus limit break, and you're just cast my own limit break.
Limit break cards. That would allow you to dodge. That's so
Ace.
would it work with the...
It wouldn't work with Titus because you have to pay 3 as an additional cost, but it would work with cards like Ace. It would be insane as a copy of Ace, for example.
How does this work with the Legend clause? So, if I had a realm on board, if I copied my own realm, would they both die?
Yes, they would both die. Or you would just say it comes in, it gains all the text of the card, but it remains the name clone.
Okay.
So either way you word it would be interesting. But
I could see this. This is similar to Renoa. I don't think this is too powerful, right? There's not that much difference, I think, than flickering a forward than just copying it.
That is true. So, because if they responded and killed it, so I guess the difference is this would not target when it comes in. It would be coming in as a copy. So if I have priority and I cast Clone, it is coming in as a copy of that card. You can't kill that card in response.
So it's like a safer Renoa.
Safer Renoa, yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Now you could argue that maybe we shouldn't be printing more Renoas, but you seem to like these flicker effects.
I sure do. All right. Let's go with an interesting monster. Grave Pact. Whenever a creature you control dies, each other player sacrifices a creature. So if one of my forwards dies, one of your forwards dies.
Ooh, I love this. Oh,
yeah,
this is beautiful.
Isn't it interesting? So you animate a blue worm, pass turn, trigger Grave Pact.
Or you just like animate blue worm, summon a mirror from your break zone. Now your opponent has to sacrifice a forward. Oh, this is so good. Wow, I would love this so much because also just blocking becomes so much more dangerous.
And
your opponent.
That's true when they have a Grave Pact and Magic. Like it can be very punishing. There's a reason this card is still $10, even though it's not even constructed playable. Well, I guess it is technically in mod. It's legal in these formats. It's played in Commander, I'm sure.
I imagine it's better in multiplayer formats. No, I like this a lot. I would love to see this.
Yeah.
I imagine it would make control maybe. So one of the dangerous things about this compared to Magic is that there's no token. There's barely any tokens in Final Fantasy, as in there's no tokens.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I imagine if you play tokens, it helps you like get around the Grave Pact downside if your opponent plays it, and we don't have a way around that.
What if you played like this? Like this is probably Lightning card, obviously. What if you played this with like fan threats? So like we each sacrifice a thing, and you sacrifice another thing. And God forbid you're in the mirror match and your opponent has a Grave Pact. You just we're losing everything. It's basically Death Machine.
Or you like cast like Ixion, wipe your own board, and then your opponent's whole board goes. No, this is really funny.
Yeah.
I would love to see the game states that this causes.
Okay. All right. I have a really simple one, and that's Birds of Paradise. So this is just really simple. It taps for mana of any color. So this would be a 1 CP card that taps for any color.
Yeah, this is called Everay. It exists.
Look forward to Tori's video sometime before this video or after this video, but
probably after.
Yeah, but this is particularly not a enchantment or artifact.
Yeah.
This is a forward.
It's a mana dork. Yeah, we don't have. Do we kind of have something like Birds of Paradise? I think
they're like 4 mana and stuff.
Well, we have that Kane that just came out in the new set that when he attacks, activates 2 characters.
Yeah. This would not.
So
when it attacks,
this doesn't have to attack, and it can do it on your opponent's turn too.
Yeah.
So, and it needs to live a whole cycle to use the effect, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't know why we don't actually have any mana dorks.
They might be too good, or maybe they're not good enough. Maybe I'm sure they tested them for sure.
Maybe just our removal's too good, and everything just dies instantly, so it's like not worth it. I don't know, because this also maybe the fact I could see that there could be an issue with due to how the damage system works in Final Fantasy that they were afraid of like putting cheap like 1/1s on board.
Okay.
Like if they printed like a 2/2 with like 1k power with the effect that I can dull to like generate 1 CP, that might be too good in Final Fantasy because that's playing that turn 1 isn't really that different than just playing a 2 mana backup. But then the forward can also like hit face.
Yeah, now this forward doesn't have actual power. You can get a power. In fact, I've killed an opponent with the Birds of Paradise.
Yeah, but in Final Fantasy though, like forwards can't not have power.
Correct, because then they don't have.
Because then they die.
They die. Yeah, yeah. It is interesting, but you would just have it say like can't attack or something.
Yeah,
but
can't attack. Yeah,
but it's just the same as a backup then. But it does allow you to break the backup cycle of only being able to have 6 backups.
Yeah, I guess we kind of do have a bird who does that. There's the Fat Chocobo, who can dull himself to free play the backups.
Yeah, but that doesn't allow you to get to 6 backups, right?
That's true.
Like if Fat Chocobo also said you can have if Fat Chocobo also said you can have more than 5 backups, that would be really interesting.
Yeah, but I think the closest we have to this would be the Fat Chocobo that allows you to like generate value each turn by free playing cards.
Okay. All right, now I have one more card before we get into my 2 favorites. Phyrexian Arena. I think this card would be interesting. At the beginning of your upkeep, you draw a card and lose a life. Would this card see play? Would it be broken? So let's keep it the 3 mana. Let's say it's an artifact and lightning. At the beginning of your turn, draw an extra card, take a damage. Too good? Not good enough.
This sounds like significantly worse than the Yawgmoth's Yawgmoth
bargain?
enchantment
Yeah.
you showed earlier.
For sure.
Yeah. This
For
is just
sure.
Yawgmoth's bargain, but significantly worse. Okay.
This
so
is 3 mana. It's a lot cheaper.
it's 3. I thought it was
3.
there's something on my screen. It looked like a 4.
Okay, so this is 3 mana.
3 mana. So it has an actual cost of 5 mana if we include the cost of the card, which means that it needs to draw at least 3 cards before you actually gain any value out of it.
So is this worse than Libronian?
I mean, the Librarian sees 0 play.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know that this is worse.
I think it is.
I think that I would pitch 2 and play this on turn 1 in an aggro deck.
In an aggro deck?
If I'm gonna draw a card and take a damage, but I'm gonna draw an extra card, like I don't know, maybe you make this cost 2 instead of 3.
I don't think you'd even play this. Well, I think in aggro, if you play this in an aggro deck, it means that you lose the aggro mirror.
You'd lose 2 cards. Yeah, correct. So you would.
That'd be dangerous.
You'd win the control decks though, right? Because in the control mirrors, they would wrap your board, and the next turn you draw 3 cards.
Yeah,
right?
but
So it'd be really
you're kind of
like
putting yourself
decks.
a turn behind at the beginning of the game, though. Like you're giving your
You
opponent one more turn to like
yeah,
stabilize,
you're playing
right?
one less because you're playing 1 less forward.
Yeah, I think playing a 3-drop turn 1 that does nothing. Like this isn't that different than just playing a backup.
This on a forward for 2. What if this was on a forward for 2 in a red deck?
I would like this a lot more on a forward.
So on a forward for 2 in a red deck. So at the beginning of your turn, take a damage, draw a card. Would you play that? What if it had haste? I think it needs to have haste, right?
It would need to have haste, yeah.
But so 2 mana red card or 2 mana lightning card probably actually that's at the beginning of your turn, draw a card, take a damage with haste. I think that would see play.
I would play that. Yeah.
And I don't think it would be broken. It would kill me more times than most people because I hate lightning cards, but I don't think it'd be broken.
Yeah, because like if you think about this in Final Fantasy, right? This costs 4, right? And it's generating you 2 mana every turn. You can kind of think of it as like that, right? But if you want to do that, like we already have cards that do that. We have like Tenzin does that kind of, right?
Tenzin's very good.
Right? Tenzin costs 6, and he generates 2 mana every turn. But he generates 1 when he dies, right? So he is kind of like 4 CP, generates something every turn, and he doesn't even hit you, and he gives you a body. So I think without the body, this isn't cutting it in Final Fantasy.
But forward with haste probably, yeah.
Yeah, with haste.
All right.
Definitely.
We're going to go to my all-time favorite card of all time in Magic. Before we go to what I think might be too broken, but I think could be printed, is where this ends. And that is, well, first off, we're going to go to better. I don't like that picture. All right. This is a 2-mana enchantment which has Threshold, which means that you need 7 cards in your break zone. So think Cypher, think Fujin, Raijin. You need 10 cards. They have Threshold. Whenever your opponent plays a spell, you may put a creature card from your hand into play. I love this card. So let's say you need to have 10 cards in your break zone.
Sam.
Yeah, I'm listening.
Sam. What is this? No.
You're saying it's too powerful?
This is way too powerful. So
it doesn't do anything as a monster. It doesn't attack. It doesn't damage. You need to have 10 cards in your break zone. You have to have a Leviathan in your hand. All kinds of things have to go right.
Okay, first of all, do you know how searchable this card would be in in Final Fantasy? A 2 CP monster? Yeah. If only there was a way we could get 2 CP monsters onto the board. Oh my god. Realm doesn't exist.
For sure. For sure.
World.
But
also,
you still need Threshold, and it's 2 colors.
Oh, is it 2 colors? Realm doesn't care what fucking colors.
No, I get that for sure. But how often do realms fill up the break zone like that quickly?
How quickly do water decks fill up their break zone?
With Realm? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like it's...
Yeah. I mean, how quickly does Lena get online in mono water?
Pretty quickly, yeah.
Pretty quickly, and this is twice as quick.
Would you play this in mono water? Probably, yeah. So you could like play something, you're like response Shinryu.
Yeah, exactly. Response Levy 9. Response Ash. Nice forward. Shrink -10K.
So this does, by the way, create an auto ability. So every time your opponent plays a forward, which is weird because when your opponent plays a forward, there's not usually a stack created. But this would create a stack when your opponent plays a forward.
So yeah, that also buffs all of the removal in fire, right? If you're putting this in like water fire.
Yeah.
This is a card. I do not think I think it's a little too easy to fill up the break zone in Final Fantasy compared to Magic. I think there would need to be a bigger downside.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. So
but the problem is you can't just make it a cost. You can't just increase the cost because
you
Final
increase the
Fantasy, you can just play
threshold
a
to
turn.
10, not 7, but yeah.
Yeah, I think the threshold would need to be even higher than that. Like, what's the threshold on Ultimecia? 15?
Yeah.
I think it would need to be something like 15, because 15 is a lot easier to deal with, because that gives you more time to start cleaning out your opponent's break zone to keep it down, right? Because we have
Yeah.
cards like Mist Dragon to just reset it, and Irvine to just keep it low. I
Mhm.
think that would be fine, but 7 is just such a low number,
Yeah,
right?
no,
You can
I
get
was
to
thinking, I was thinking 10. I think 15 is reasonable. I think
like you can
12
get
is
to 7
probably
on
good.
turn 2,
Yeah.
right? Like if you're going second and turn 1, you like play a backup.
So you just keep the Leviathan in your hand, yeah.
Yeah, like turn 1 you like play a backup, and
The
then like
thing
turn
is
2
that,
you
like-
play Realm for this.
Yeah, the thing is that you might lose those games if your opponent's like, okay, I just don't have to cast something until I can deal with, or I draw an Amaterasu, I can just play backups. You know, like
Well,
I don't
backups
have
are
to,
casting. Is backups not casting?
sorry,
a
they
spell?
would. So this is plays a spell. You're right. So I would alter this to when your opponent plays a creature.
Okay. Because I was
You
gonna say
may play
also
a
if they
creature,
try to
yeah.
misdragon your break zone, it would then trigger it.
Yeah,
Which is-
this would actually be really interesting too if Hunting Grounds was some sort of like summon monster. Like so, like basically when your opponent casts a summon, you may cast a summon without paying its cost. Would be interesting too.
yeah, that would be really interesting. But the problem is a lot of decks run like basically no summons.
Exactly. So
So I don't think
is this not playable then?
I think it would be playable in that case.
All right.
I think it would need to be the creatures. Like if when your opponent plays a creature, you may play a creature from your hand.
Fair enough. All right, let's go to what I think is the most broken card for us, and that would be Tooth and Nail. All right, so Tooth and Nail is a 7-mana sorcery. Choose one. Search your library for up to 2 creature cards. It's Sildra. Reveal them and put them in your hand. Or put up to 2 creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. And if you pay the Entwine cost, do both. So currently we don't have a Sildra that searches for 2 forwards and puts them into play. Now, mind you, this is 9 mana to do this. And certainly there are ways to cheat summons. So you'd have to be careful. You'd have to make sure it doesn't like the Rydia, for example, the Rydia that casts a summon for 7 or less or whatever it is. You'd have to cost this effectively at like 9 or 11. So maybe even like an 11 CP card that searches for 2 forwards and puts them into play. Or a 9 CP card that does this, and if you pay 14, puts them into play. I guess 9 would be too much, right? So maybe the card costs like... So what would make Sildra fair? Sildra would need to cost like 7 to be fair, right?
If it's just putting them into your hand?
Yes.
I think Sildra would be fair at 6.
Okay, so let's say this card costs 6, but the Entwine cost was 10. So you have to pay 10 total to search for 2 cards and put them into play. If you draw this card in your opening hand, you can search for 2 forwards and put them into play. That might be too good, but it also they might just die. You might get Shantotoed and be out of the game. But if you search for Neo Exit and Ishtola.
Oh God, no. I think that this would need to be on a forward.
Oh, okay.
I think this is, no. I know that sounds like
it
it's
can be
a buff, but you would
Amaterasu.
so exactly, so you can get Amaterasu it, so you can cancel it. Because as it stands, we have very few ways to cancel summons in the game. Specifically, summons that cost more than 5. Right? We have Mist Dragon, and we have a couple backups that can crack themselves, and we have Y'shtola. But one of the main reasons that Arc is so powerful is that the printed number in the top left corner is 9,
Yeah.
and not what you're actually paying. In that it's really hard to cancel Arc. So if this was on a forward, or even a backup, it would need to be a forward because cancel levy only works on forwards. There's a lot more counterplay, right? Because there's still the Y'shtola, but now we have Amat, we have cancel levy, and I feel like there's Fina and Wind, although this would probably come down before.
So what if there was some
Fina.
sort of bargaining? I don't know. I say bargaining because I'm just kind of developing this mechanic in my head. So instead of Entwine, there's like bargain, right? So basically it's Tooth and Nail, and the bargain cost is like pay 3 to life. So the cost is simply you can pay 2 life to do both, right? But your opponent can pay 2 life to stop you from doing both. And then if you're like, okay, I'll pay 2 more life, it's back on. So now they've paid 4 life and they're doing both. Wouldn't that be interesting? And would it see play?
I that, 2 life is a lot of life.
2 life is a lot of life.
It's also really awkward. They usually don't like us taking 2 damage at a time because like triggering 2 EX bursts at the same time causes people to not know how that
And there are
works
cards
in
that
the stack.
prevent all, and so if I bargain for 4, but I have a Gabranth that's going to stop me from taking damage, or I forget
Or
the
an
other
Auron.
an Auron, yeah, or the other cards that will prevent the next damage dealt to me, Warrior of Light, the green one, then I can bargain for 6, and there's nothing you can do about it. So maybe the bargaining mechanic itself makes those cards playable. So maybe that's actually an interesting mechanic by itself. Is like you take these cards that are unplayable and you actually make them very playable, but you have to make sure the cards that you print don't break those cards in half. Otherwise, you end up with a card like those cards are unplayable, right? Well, so was Guido, the blue backup, right? So Guido was unplayable. Yeah, it's unplayable, and then they printed Barrel Eye, and now they had to ban Guido. So
it's still unplayable.
Yeah, but
no one's played with it.
Exactly. If they made Tooth and Nail with this bargaining mechanic, those cards would be playable. Would they break it? Would you be able to cast one of those cards and cast Tooth and Nail, and to do that?
Maybe. I don't know.
There's
this
too
is
much
just such a broken effect. Because like the thing is with Magic is that once you get to having like 9 backups on your side of the field, you're allowed to do whatever you want, right? Like they can put a card that basically says 10 mana win the game, and you know what? Sure, whatever. But in Final Fantasy, like we can just cast these turn 1, so it's just like such a dangerous effect.
Yeah, so
like
that's
high
interesting.
costs aren't nearly as restricting in Final Fantasy.
So what we haven't considered is on any of these cards we're like, hey, this is too broken because you could do this so early in Final Fantasy as opposed to Magic, is putting on the Sephiroth clause, right? Like you can only play this. Sephiroth said you can only play this if either person is taking, I forget if it's like 3 or 5 damage or 4 damage or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, so Tooth and Nail would say you can only play this if a player has taken 4 damage.
That like you put that clause on here, and suddenly I'm okay with it. If it was like do nothing and then like damage 4, do both. Like maybe this could just have the entwine would just be like damage 4 or damage 5.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah. So a 6 mana Sildra that you can pay 8 or 10 for at damage 4 or 5.
And it would need to be only on your turn, right? Because like when I'm bursting you down, like you shouldn't just be able to like summon Levy 9 and Realm on on my turn. Okay, you can't do that. But
yeah, so there are summons that set that precedent, right? You have Hecaton Chair that can only be cast during your turn, for example.
Yes.
So a Tooth and Nail, it would only be cast on your turn, and you need to be at damage 5 for it to have an effective ability. I like them playing with that ability. I like the card Sephiroth. It would see more play if it wasn't dark, right? So they need to play they need to have more cards that can't be played until later, but allow them to be discarded so they can actually be put in decks, because that card's only ever been played as of like a one of, and that was during like last year's format. And it's just an interesting design space that they could explore more if they allowed you to discard for colors.
Yeah. Also, like this card wouldn't be completely, if we're assuming it costs 6, wouldn't even be like completely useless, right? Like if we had just like 2 big boys in our hand already, paying 6 just to summon them would be fine. Potentially even great. If it's like, if I had like Realm and Tyvis in hand, I'm willing to pay 6 to summon both. That's cheaper than casting them normally.
Yes,
so
it is. I'm just trying to think of, so I guess, yeah, it's not broken early, because if you cast 2 things for 6 early, you're going to get Shantoto'd, right? So it's still good, though. It's still good. If you cast Realm Tyvis, you are literally looking at putting 5 forwards on the field.
Yeah.
And which is really obviously nuts, but they could limit break Shantoto you, for example.
Yes, they could. And chances are you'd have like nothing left in hand to on that.
Exactly. So it's not broken. It's really good. A design space that they have to be careful with, because I'm not looking, like, I don't like Corella, for example. And I know, like, some of these cards are flirting with that level of power. Maybe every one of them is flirting with that level of power. But I guess all the cards I chose, minus even the Goblin Guide we talked about adding would be good for control decks. All the cards I chose are cards that would be good in control decks. Actually, I think every one of them. I'm sure there are a lot of aggro cards from Magic that people would love to see. But I don't like cards like Corilla because it forces a game that's already favoring the offense to be even more offensive, right?
Yeah. The issue with Corilla is that she can come down on turns 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion. So like the fact if you're putting these like restrictions on damage or cards in break zone or other things, just you can do the broken things as long as you just like wait a few turns. I think that's a fair place for things to be.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all we had for you guys today. I don't know whether it'll be before this video or after this video, but go ahead and check out Tori's video on Everate. I'm sure it's gonna be really exciting, and he's gonna give a lot of love into it. And then we will see some of you guys in the Tampa LQ. Tori and Key will be commentating that, so look for that. That'll be on this YouTube channel. And then we have the Virginia LQ after that. I hope to see you guys in Portland. And are you going to RVA for that one? For the Materia Cup?
The North Carolina, yeah.
North Carolina one.
North Carolina Materia. Yep.
Okay, cool. So that's where we'll see you guys. Anything else you want to say, Tori?
Nope, that's all for today.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll see you guys there. Take care.
Okay, bye.